Hello and welcome to Conversations with the Voice of Reason. I'm your host, Benjamin Boyce, and today's conversant is Dr. P, who is a 30-year qualified doctor of clinical psychology over in Britain. She also is a certified expert witness around child welfare cases in the courts there, and she has a bone to pick with pediatric gender transition or gender care or medicine. She thinks that gender dysphoria is non-existent, and in this conversation we talk about her reasoning and her life more broadly. She's a beautiful woman. Unfortunately, you can't see that because she is a non at this point due to threats against her job for speaking her mind on this issue. You can find links to her Twitter down there in the description, as well as links to support this channel. Without further ado, here is Dr. P. Hey, how are you?
Hello, I'm very well.
Good. Nice to meet you.
Yeah, likewise. I've listened to so many of your podcasts. You do have a very calming voice, I have to say. So I
Well,
do
let's see
enjoy
if
listening.
I can't. You'll stay awake while we talk.
Yeah. Can I just clarify, Benjamin? I'm not sure I want my face on because I'm being doxxed at the moment by
I
that
will
Lindsay
not.
Watson bloke.
I'm only going to use the audio. It's just helpful for
Okay,
me
fantastic.
to see you so I
Yes.
can
Okay,
read.
as we're talking, of course.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
absolutely.
Okay,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
That's the only
I
thing.
can I can see you facing. Can you see me properly?
Yeah, can.
See me okay?
You learning Arabic?
I am, yes. I've spent the last 2 weeks trying to learn tenses, and my husband grilled me this morning, and I was absolutely hopeless. It's such a difficult language. It
Really?
is so difficult. Yeah. I actually wrote an article on whether because Arabic is a gendered language, everything is gendered, and I wrote an article. I wondered if gender ideology could have taken off if English was a gendered language. Whether it would have had such a hold over people. Because the way Arabic is constructed, you can't change the entire sentence structure. Everything will change if you change the sex of the person you're speaking to. And I
Hmm.
just wonder if we were able to slip into this nonsense because, we have the you pronoun, the you. It can be unsexed. And you can write a whole article about somebody without mentioning whether they're male or female.
Yeah.
That was one of the articles I wrote on language, how language has been corrupted and complicated
Yes.
to sort of lull us into a world where we accept nonsense, really. Yeah.
Yeah, language
Mm.
is the main vector of what some people call critical theory or postmodern deconstruction.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, indeed. Which is why I never write the word trans woman in full. We haven't started yet, we?
Oh,
We're
we
not.
can.
This is just us chatting. Sorry.
Oh,
Oh,
whenever.
okay,
I always just wait
okay,
until the conversation starts, and usually it starts pretty quickly
okay,
because,
okay. Yes, I mean it's why I never write the word trans woman in full because I believe that every time somebody uses that word, the neural connections are being made, your brain is being shaped. It's really important not to use their language. So if I write it, I always just write it with the asterisks. And I have a one woman campaign on Twitter to rehabilitate the word transvestite because that's what they are. They're not any type of woman. And you juxtapose the word trans and woman. Any qualification of woman is dangerous. So I just say no, we don't use it at all. You
hmm,
know, the trans woman, black woman, whatever. It's just male, it's just man, and it's just woman. There is no subset of women. So I feel very strongly about the use of the word trans woman. It
hmm.
lulled us into this madness as well.
Uh, for creative pushback,
Yeah.
there are subsets of women, like a pregnant woman, a mother, a girl.
Yes.
So there
Yes.
are th- there are
Yes. But we are
designations
all,
within woman
yeah,
that are
within what we know
useful.
is to be a woman. You've got the right chromosomes. You can't cross. You can't cross. You know, you can't cross categories into womanhood. You can be a different type of woman. I'm a black woman. I'm always being told I'm white on Twitter. People somehow can't quite believe that I'm black. Well, I'm being told I'm a white man. That's what I often get. But they're all women. Fat, old. My mum's 89. My daughter's 25. Black, white. We're all women.
Yeah.
A man can never be a woman. It's a closed category. It's ours.
what do you think about, again, creatively, since we're talking about the domain of language? Can a
Mhm,
man emulate a woman, let's say, the holy grail of the male author is the believable female character? So sometimes through the imagination, a man or a woman can model the other sex believably.
mhm, mhm. I, I don't know. Can you give me an example of a man who's really modeled the other sex in literature, believably?
Well, the first novels were
Mhm.
what was the first novel? It's been a while since I was thinking through this stuff,
Yeah, yeah,
but the novel as a genre is there's the what happens in the book, but then there's a lot of interiority, and
mhm.
the more that a female models a male psychology
Yeah,
or just the feeling,
yeah, yeah,
the less willing we are to suspend our disbelief, or the more readily we suspend our disbelief in that we're
yeah,
talking about a male, or I'm in the mind of like just J.K. Rowling, since we're in the gender topic. Everybody
yeah,
believes that
yeah,
Harry
yeah,
is a boy, and there's something about his
yeah,
boyness that is very important to the plot on an archetypal level.
yeah. I think the interesting word you used there was interiority. I think I've never heard that word before. Fair enough. You
Yeah,
know, go off on your mental flights of fantasy. I really don't care what's going on in the bloke's head. I don't want him in the toilet next to me
yeah,
or in the hospital room or giving me a mammogram or a smear test.
yeah.
I think we spend far too much time thinking about what's going on in the heads of transvestites. I don't care.
Huh.
I'm interested in the women and the children. I really don't care whether somebody can approximate to the opposite sex on a bit of paper. That's not what happens. You know, that's not what concerns me when I go up to London and I need to use the public toilet at Waterloo Station and I have to walk in there and I have to wonder whether there's a man there or not. I'm
Yeah,
not interested in his interiority. I'm interested in his exteriority. I
yeah,
don't want to see it in my private spaces. It's as simple
yeah.
as that.
When did this topic first encounter you?
Okay, I was living in the Middle East for some time, and I literally had no idea this was happening. And and then I came back and I saw my red pill moment was Zach Bridges, the cyclist, the trans cyclist who pretends to be called Emily, and he was moaning that he couldn't or that he was a woman and he wanted to cycle with the women. And I was on Facebook and I looked at it and thought, everyone's going to laugh at this. It's just nonsense. This is a bloke. This is a man who's just grown his hair. And then I was really shocked at the response I got and losing friendships on Facebook. So that
Hmm.
was my first encounter with gender ideology. Most of it had just passed over my head because I've been out in the Middle East and they're very good at blocking websites. They will just openly you'll click on a website, you know, this friendly looking cartoon will come up and it will just
Hmm.
basically say you're not allowed to look at this page. And that's it. So I had no idea this was going on,
That
you know,
suppression
Mhm.
of information might work well in certain instances of social contagion and mimetic warfare.
Yeah, I think so. I think the internet has its good, you know, has its good points and it connects people, but it has been the most powerful weapon, I think, in spreading this what I consider to be a mass psychosis.
Hmm.
You know, the kids in Qatar are safe from this because they're literally not allowed to see it. They don't see it. And I think there's a direct correlation with gender ideology, with people identifying as trans, with internet connection. You know, it follows on. It's like the internet is like, you know, it's like the rats spreading the fleas on the rats spreading the Black Death. You
Hmm.
know,
Hmm.
it's a vector. The internet is a vector. It's like a disease vector.
Hmm. Well, it could be a vector for vaccines too, uh, which is
Sorry, I'm talking about vaccines. I'm recovering from the the third bout of COVID,
the
so I might be
coof.
coughing a little bit.
Oh,
Yeah.
geez, three. Are
Mm-hmm.
you in a like competition with a sister or a friend to see how many
I
times
don't
you
know,
get
but
it?
I just thought again 2 weeks ago, and my chest is still a bit still a bit tight
Mm,
and
sorry.
not quite back to normal. Yeah, yeah.
It's it's a it's a cultural phenomena, but it's also a class phenomena. You say you lost friends on Facebook. There's probably, you could probably say what type of friends or friends in which domain that shut you down, or were they across the board?
They, they were sort of across the board. My oldest friend was somebody I'd known since I was 14, living in the Caribbean, which really surprised me because she grew up Black Caribbean, like myself, in a completely different sort of social milieu. So I thought she would be immune to it, but she's been living in New York for many years now. So she shut me down, and people. I was on various crafting groups. I do needle felting and stuff like that, and a lot of the women on the groups just completely, just completely cut me off.
Hmm.
I had a very good friend, online friend, who was a lady from Florida. We'd never met. Jewish lady from Florida called Lauren. We were really good friends online, and she just completely shut me down. We love trans people. Yeah, she said, I've seen your post. We love trans people, and that was the
Yeah.
end of it. That was the end of our friendship.
Why do you think women are another vector, the allies of this
Mm-hmm.
movement? Why do you
Mm-hmm.
think, is there something about the psychology or the sociology of middle-aged
I think it's
women?
I think it's there's a number of things going on. I'm a firm believer in us being driven by evolutionary processes. And I was having this conversation with my very good friend in the garden a couple of days ago. She doesn't quite agree with me. I think young, I think we keep forgetting that we are intelligent apes, yeah? And we evolved in communities of around, is it 200, something like that? Yeah, was it the Dunbar's number? 200.
Mhm.
And I think that for younger women, it was an evolutionary pressure to to align yourself with the powerful males in the group. Yeah,
Yeah.
your children got more food, your genes got sprayed into the next generation. I think that's why younger women do it. I think almost the same reason for older women, but I think there's also one of the reasons why a lot of the people who oppose this are women past childbearing age. Okay, our children are grown up. They're safely into the we're safely we've created the next generation. We're not competing for resources. We can now say no. But likewise, there's also a subset of women who feel that in order to gain power, that they have to align themselves with the strongest men in the group. You know,
Mhm.
and the people who support this is why you get the middle class educated women. I have yet to see a shop cashier or an early morning cleaner who is going to be a woman screaming about trans rights. These women have nothing to gain.
Mm.
They're going to be doing their cleaning job, their cashier job, their dinner lady job, whatever. They've got nothing to gain by aligning themselves with the strongest men in the group. It's the women who have political power already and who want to cling to that power or political power or social power or some sort of prestige, and they need to hold on to that. So that's the older women who are aligning to it. The younger women are doing it for evolutionary purposes,
Hmm.
which is one of the reasons why I think trans ideology is going to fail eventually, because we are it will it will.
No, I'm just saying
We
it,
keep
it breeds
yeah
itself out of existence. So,
yeah, that too, but it goes against our basic nature as human beings. We are
hmm.
sexually dimorphic. I was in my local shop the other day. It's like a homeware shop, and I just looked at this couple come in, and I just thought, I looked at them, I thought, this is how trans is going to fail because it's going against our evolutionary pressures. So what it was a couple came in. It was a man and a woman, and they had a newborn. The baby must have been maybe just a few days old, I think, and the dad was holding the baby, and it was like bees around a honeypot. Maybe every woman in the queue was literally queuing and fussing over the baby, and the men were sort of just looking, but the women they were like drawn to this baby. And I think that it was almost an unconscious process that was going on. And I was standing
Hmm.
back watching it, and I thought, these pressures, our evolutionary pressures, are so strong that no matter how many DEI policies you've got, how strong whatever laws you're going to pass, you cannot overcome the fact that we are apes with big brains who wear clothes, and we are male and female. And whether it takes 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, it's going to fail because it's going against our very biology, against our nature. It's going to burn it. And as you say, Sorry, it's going to burn itself out too.
That also highlights the particular perniciousness of the meme, that cultural artifact, or it's a virus of the trans child. So it does hijack the maternal instinct.
It hijacks. Yeah, I know. It's quite shocking. But again, I think these are women who want to be noticed. I have I've categorized a number of different ways into transgenderism for the children. But the concept of the trans child, I feel very strongly about this as a clinical psychologist, that the trans child does not exist. I call them puberty groomed minors. It's grooming. And I argue that transitioning children is, I call it the daylight twin of child sexual abuse. Child sexual abuse is the dark
Wow.
twin,
Yeah.
and I call it childhood transition abuse is the daylight twin. And my other job as as well as being a clinical psychologist, I'm a certified expert with this in child protection. So my literal day job is working to protect children and reading about child abuse and recognizing and assessing parents. And it is open child abuse. Children there is no such thing as a trans child. Children cannot consent, and their development should not be derailed. It is a crime against humanity. Transitioning children is a crime against humanity. There's no two ways about it.
Hmm. How do
The
you
trans
prove
child does
that
not exist. Mm-hmm.
in court then? Like, what are stronger arguments to dissuade or to get the law involved in this? If you are apparently very familiar with Child Protective Services, or the British equivalent, what language or arguments need to be made to put in place this strong definition of child transition as child abuse?
We have them already. We have them already. The child is in the developmental phase. Their brain hasn't developed. They cannot make decisions. We have laws, all sorts of laws about what children can and can't do. I remember when the Falklands conflict was on, the army here raised the age, because I think a 17-year-old died out there in where was it, Argentina, and they raised the age at which youngsters could go into combat. We have those laws already. You can't drive, you can't do this, you can't even get a tattoo. There is no argument that needs to be made. The laws that are there just need to be applied to cutting your breasts off and
Well, why are
connectomies
they
and
not
God
being
knows what else.
applied then?
Again, this is the $1 million question, isn't it? And I think it's partly my profession is to blame. And I think my profession of psychology has to take a huge amount of the blame. We could have shut this down 15 years ago. One simple statement: children are not developmentally capable. They have not got the neurobiological development to consent to life altering medical procedures. That's it. We know this already, Benjamin. There is literally nothing new here. And it's not being applied out of cowardice. At the moment, I'm facing professional probably being struck off because I have put my head above the parapet
Yeah.
and I've said this is wrong. People are frightened. I have a mortgage to pay and whatever, but I literally can't. I cannot sit back and be silent. Some of my family members are saying, "You just take a back seat," and I can't. This is evil.
Hmm. What is the psychology of psychologists that would put them in the position of forwarding something that is, by definition, anti-Hippocratic oath?
But we've been here many times before. Whenever I see psychologists arguing for this, including my own professional body, I'm reminded of the scene from Schindler's List where the doctors are all standing there waiting for the Jewish people to come off and the prisoners to come off the trains, and they're all standing there in their white coats waiting to do the selection. This is nothing new. It's conformity, and the things that makes it so egregious for psychologists that we know what is happening. We can take that meta position, and we know about social conformity. We know about obedience. We know all the studies, yet we have fallen into it. We should be able to stand back and say, look, this is the Ash experiment. This is Milgram. This is what's happening. Stop. But we're not. We have fallen into it again because people have, I think it comes pragmatically. It comes down to people have mortgages to pay and bills to pay. and they can be cancelled and thrown onto the, thrown onto the to unemployment. I said I'm willing to do anything. I will work in Tesco's. I will stack shelves. I will go and weed my neighbours' gardens if they strike me off. But I will not be quiet because I can't sit back and see this terrible wrong happening. I can't. I'm making myself sound like a crusader. I'm not, but I'm just somebody who had the training as a clinical psychologist here in the UK, and it's really hard.
Is
And
it?
I know my lectures. Yeah, yeah, yeah. People I know that lectured me when I trained over 30 years ago, they're still around. They're high up in the BPS and they're not saying anything. They're just quiet. They're just being quiet. And I just think, what the hell is going on?
Um, I'm a bit hogtied in the interview because of the anonymity, but I'm really
Yeah.
fascinated by you as a person. So I'm trying to
Okay.
formulate a way to ask this question without, painting the interview into a corner. But what is it about you, your upbringing, your
Yeah.
psychology that
Yes.
put you in harm's way for this cause? Why
Do you know
stand
what?
on principle?
What's my origin story?
Yeah.
It's been many years in the making, and I've thought about this a lot. And I've said this on another podcast. My dad came from the Caribbean in the 1950s from Guyana, and he joined the Air Force. He joined the Air Force in about the mid 1950s, so it would have been just after the war. So they were still on a sort of war footing, and so I think he was personally interested in why Britain had gone to war in Nazism. And I remember being about quite young. I can't remember. I was really way too young to read it. I must have been about 12, right? And my dad, being a military man, never liked to see anybody not doing anything in the house. We were always doing stuff. And being a Caribbean parent, you never ever ever tell a Caribbean parent you're bored because they're going to find something for you to do. So he gave me two books to read. One was Bullfinch's Mythology with all the Greek gods, and the other book he gave me to read was The Rise and Fall of the Third Reich by William L. Shearer.
Jeez,
I
are you
think it was one.
serious? At 12?
Yeah, and I think I was actually. I actually think I was younger than that. I think I
Okay.
was younger. I remember where we were living. I think I was younger than 12. I must have been about 10 actually. And he
Wow.
gave this to me. He said, "Right, read that." And I fell into it. I fell into it, and then so that was always in the back of my mind. And at this roughly about the same time, my mum had a friend called Kate, who was a war bride. So we're talking about the early 70s now. So she was now living on the Air Force base. And I wonder, and I realized that they found each other. Kate, even though she was an actual young Nazi, and my mother being a black woman, were two people out of sync with the rest of the people on the camp. German black woman, so they found each other. They were friends. And Kate, she was a big black woman. She's come round, and I remember sitting in the kitchen and hearing Kate say Hitler was a good man. Hitler was a good man. He built the roads. Because I remember my mother's reaction at the time, my mother's absolute horrified reaction. So all these things were in the back of my mind. And in psychology, we have something called behaviorally silent learning, which is that you can learn something, but it doesn't necessarily manifest as being learned for a long time. It's called behaviorally silent. So I realized that reading that book, The Rise and Fall of the Third Reich, listening to Kate say Hitler was actually a good man because he built the roads and made the trains run on time. I mean, it's a cliche, but I actually heard her say that. So I now realize that when I saw again what I see as the rise of evil and a society going in the wrong direction, I now realize I ticked back to 30, 40 years earlier. And I remember reading about how the Nazis came to power and how so many people did nothing to stop this evil.
Hmm.
And I realized that was my moment. The other thing was, quite ironically, was I was watching Narcos years and years ago with Pedro Pascal, who's a dreadful person. The first series of Narcos, and it was about what's that big drug dealer in Colombia? I can't remember
Chavez,
his
is
name
it?
now. Yes, yeah, I think it was when he was just smuggling TVs over the border. He's a really famous Medellin cartel, I think it was, and he could have been stopped. And there's a scene where the border guards are, he's smuggling TVs and they let him go. And again, they could have stopped him at that point, for the damage he went on to do. And I think, I think that enough people didn't speak up at the right time. This could have been stopped in its tracks had just maybe 20 or 30 individuals with enough clout and power and integrity had said no about 20 years ago. We wouldn't be in what I think is an existential disaster and crisis for society right now. So that's a long way to answer your question. I think this is, without sounding dramatic, and of course the two things are not parallel, they're not directly analogous, they're not analogous, the principle is the same. This is our version. Speaking up now is our version of whether you grasped on your Jewish neighbor or you put them in your cellar. It's that same moral dilemma that people are being placed now. What do I do in the face of what I know to be evil, what I know to be morally wrong? What choice do I make? What do I personally do? And that's how I've got where I am today, I think.
Mm-hmm.
From
How do
reading
you,
that book 40 years ago.
you still have to be smart about how you resist. What are some of the methods that you find are most productive or effective, rather,
Mm-hmm.
in your mission?
Okay, personally, I think it's to use my knowledge and my training as a clinical psychologist to try and bring a theoretical argument against why, to bring my knowledge to bear onto the issue. Because as far as I'm aware, there's only Jordan Peterson, clinical psychologist. There are other psychologists speaking up, but clinical psychologists, it's just Jordan Peterson. So, I mean, I don't have those sort of, I'm not out at the moment. I don't necessarily have those oratorical skills like he has. So I can write. I like writing. So I've been writing my articles. They're all under my profile. And I'm trying to get the one about why gender dysphoria is alive. It's actually the very first one I wrote. I'm trying to get that to hit 1 million views by the end of the year. So this is my way of writing of
Yeah.
fighting the battle. It's to write articles and posts. And this is what I've been I got the email the other day saying that your posts have been, 3 of your posts have been reported as being harmful to trans people, and we're going to determine whether we're going to put you in front of a fitness to practice hearing. I said, you know what, so be
Oh,
it.
okay.
So
Okay.
be it.
Yeah.
Mm, mm.
Well, I mean, you are in the UK, and they have a way with policing words for some reason.
Yeah,
But
absolutely. Hmm.
can you um can you steel man and then deconstruct this concept of gender dysphoria? What's the
Okay,
strongest justification for it existing, and then why doesn't it exist?
justification for existing. Um, None, because it's a false. I had originally said gender dysphoria isn't real, and people say, yeah, because I'm feeling really miserable, and I knew it. I said, okay. I've now reworded it. I say, but gender dysphoria is a false construct. Okay,
Okay.
it has no clinical validity. It has no empirical basis. I think it was Genevieve Glutch. They literally, a committee literally sat down and invented it from the old gender identity disorder because they wanted to change it from being a disorder. And in psychology, and as in my paper, Why Gender Dysphoria is a Lie, as clinical psychologists, we are taught that we are scientist practitioners. Everything we do has to be evidence based.
Okay.
There wasn't a single day in my training, I'm not joking, but somebody that mentioned the 2 words scientist practitioner together. What you have to do has to be evidence based, it has to be reliable, has to be I can't say replicable. And gender dysphoria isn't. There is no way of measuring it. There's no way of measuring severity of its onset. There's no way of measuring when it's gone. It's just an idea. It has absolutely no clinical validity. And I think the people who argue for its existence haven't actually read the definition of it. It's just stereotypes and circular reasoning.
Hmm.
It's ludicrous. It is absolutely ludicrous. And as psychologists, we can measure everything, Benjamin. We can measure from this, depression, anxiety, marital stress, parental, whatever. You something, you identify something, any part of the human condition, we've got a measure for it. We've got a way of quantifying it. Yeah, as I said in my
Despite the
paper, we have,
replication process or crisis, the replication crisis is harrowing
yeah,
psychology.
because
So there are,
normally, Yeah, because normally when you come up with an idea like this, it's gone through. Academic psychologists have, spent years investigating this group, getting them to talk, creating reliable measures, statistically robust measures, so we know what we're talking about. So say I've got a 20-year-old who's depressed, or 30-year-old. I can use the same measure for here in London, and I can give that same measure to somebody in Lagos, and I can give that measure to somebody in Reykjavik, and we know we're measuring the same thing because we're using the same measure. And we know what the cutoff point is for mild, moderate, severe, and we know what we're doing. Gender dysphoria is not like that. There is just no way. It is whatever the person comes to you with. I think it's got to be the only condition in the DSM-A that requires surgery to solve it, which alone should say that there's something
Is
wrong.
it the only one that requires
I think
surgery?
so. I
Well,
think
that those
so.
people who want to have a thing about losing a leg hasn't yet
Mhm.
got in the DSM. So,
Yeah, don't cut it off. And this is what I say. What is the difference between leg tissue and breast tissue? It's healthy human functional tissue.
hmm.
Why is one rated as being expendable that can go into a medical incinerator? And why is the other one you would lose your practicing license if you cut it off? It
Hmm.
makes no sense. Why
I
can
think
we
it
burn express?
doesn't it though, because the sex organs and the sex characteristics have so much psychological impact on one's life and the way that they're viewed in the world. And so doesn't it have psychological impact more than, I guess a leg probably does, but a breast
Yeah,
does
I don't
have
know.
significance.
It doesn't matter. It's still part of the healthy, functional human body.
Okay.
I mean, there are people who identify as being blind, but we don't sever their optic nerves, do we? Or people who identify as being disabled, we don't sever their spinal column. We just have to draw a line in the sand. You're not cutting off bits of healthy bodies. We're not doing it. We just have to say no.
Hmm.
This is normal tissue. It's not cancerous. It's not disease. We're not cutting it off. Find another way. Find another way to resolve your distress. I'm not cutting your bits off.
Hmm.
That's all we needed to say. And I don't know how the surgeons have got themselves into this is beyond me. It's really, we're overcomplicating this. It's really simple. We just don't cut off healthy tissue. Full stop.
Hmm.
That's it. As I
Hmm.
say in Arabia, halas, done.
Hmm. What about this is a soft argument, but what about
Mhm.
plastic surgery?
Well, that's different. I mean, it's a ridiculous argument. Obviously, there are people who go to the extremes, like, I want to have the fattest cheeks in the world or the biggest lips. And we clearly see those people as mentally ill. So why is it mentally ill to want to have, I don't know, size 40D bus? We recognize that as being wrong. Yet it's not mentally ill to want to cut your breasts off.
Hmm.
And again, the plastic surgeons aren't, you get obviously the very, very extreme ones who want to look like lizards or snakes or something. But that's very rare. It's not acceptable. The Royal Colleges here are not saying people can cut their noses off and cut their ears off and turn into lizards. But they are saying you can cut your breasts off and turn into a boy.
Hmm. And turn into a boy.
Yeah,
That's yeah.
it's the same argument. We're overcomplicating this.
So I know that there is, I can't remember
Mhm,
the phrase for this or the term for this, but there is a portion of psychology that is culturally dependent.
mhm, mhm.
But clinical psychology strives to be not universalist, but universally applicable.
Well, we strive to be. I mean, you can never extricate culture from
Yeah.
psychology. Yeah. I mean, just this week I was assessing a lady who has a lady from Africa who smacks her children, and she's now getting child protection concerns. And I wrote
Oh
my
no.
report that we need to understand that where she comes from in Africa, this is a normal way of child rearing. This is how children are raised. So we can never extricate our culture from psychology if that's what you're asking. But I think again we draw a line in the sand. This is
Hmm.
this is not a cultural issue. This is
Yeah,
not.
there's
I actually,
sorry.
well, I suppose it might be a cultural issue because I have relatives in the Caribbean still, and when I send them stuff, they're just horrified.
Mm.
Just today, I saw the picture of the pregnant man at King's College Hospital here. There's three pictures of your body pregnant. And my younger brother is a doctor he's a medical doctor, and he just was like, he just put a laughing emoji. He said, "What is this? What is this craziness you people are doing out there?" You know. So that's he's trained as a doctor, and you can see this is nonsense. I suppose if he said that over here, you could probably face professional, death for saying
Mm.
that.
Hmm. I'm really fascinated by psychology, like so many people are, probably because
Mhm.
I have a mental illness, and so that makes me
Okay.
fascinated by. No, I'm kidding. But the to be able to measure the mind,
Yeah.
how do you establish, let's say, to go back to gender dysphoria, and then something
Mhm.
that's more confirmed by data and empirical knowledge seeking and acquisition. So we know that anxiety is real and depression is real, but it is something in the mind, right? So how do
Yeah.
you just, I guess depression is probably pretty thoroughly documented. How do you
Mhm.
how do you know when somebody is depressed as opposed to it's just a thought in their head, right? On a
Behavioral
cold
changes. Behavioral
okay.
changes, and this is why when I
Behavior.
the person will maybe withdraw from activities they previously enjoyed. They will be going to the doctor more. They're not work. Their sleep will change. Their eating will change. Their interest in sex will change. All this sort of thing, and this is how we should be measuring the success of gender affirming care. Not a questionnaire. We measure it by looking at how many times have they visited the doctor in the past year? Have they held a job? How many times have they gone to the cinema? Are they still doing their hobbies? Are they still walking their dog? Are they still engaging in the activities of daily living? There is no point getting somebody who has spent 2 years trying to get gender surgery, cut their breasts off, and then get them to fill a questionnaire like the Dutch did to say, "I'm happy now." We look at objective measures, not subjective. We look at objective measures.
Okay. Yeah.
And again, this is why psychology was uniquely placed to put the kibosh on this nonsense.
Mm.
Because I
Hmm.
know, and I one of the long tweets, one of the papers I wrote is that, which got me death threats recently, is that I'm very convinced that we are seeing what I call trans type brain damage. We are seeing these hormones are causing structural different difficulty changes in the brain. They only work because they hit the brain. They're not. If they don't work, if they don't hit the brain, they're not going to work. And I think we're seeing the results of inflammation and atrophy and all sorts of things that are going on in the brain, in the disinhibition, the aggression, the ability, the fact that these people can't hold down jobs. All they do all day is go online talking about their transness. They have withdrawn from society. They cannot function as normal adults. And my argument is that we are all being subjected to a really dangerous experiment in that these people are ticking time bombs. And if people say, "Oh, look, let adults do what they like," people should be free to do what they want with their own bodies. Okay, and I reject that completely
Really?
because we are putting strong hormones into people's bodies. They're hitting their brains. They're hitting their prefrontal cortexes. We don't know what it's doing to memory, reaction time, perceptual reasoning, mood, working memory. We don't know. Yet, people on these massively strong hormones are flying planes. They're doing air traffic control. They're teaching. They've got guns. And we are all being subject to the risk that these people present. There should have been like a 20 or 30-year study with neuroimaging every 6 months to see what was going on,
Hmm.
psychometric testing to test your executive functions. I don't want to get on a plane flown by somebody who is hopped up to their eyeballs on estrogen. It's not safe. And I don't want them to be in the air traffic control when my plane is taking off. Not only from the fact that their brains are being affected by hormones, we've seen it in animal studies, we've seen the drop in IQ, but
Hmm.
also the very fact that you've gone down that route means that you have some sort of mental disability. So we have a combination of mental instability, neurobiological and neurocognitive changes. And we are all being told that this is all to do with trans rights. And we're going to, I predict it in my turfy group. We're going to see somebody crash a plane or do something weird at a nuclear power station or something. A, because they've been misgendered, or B, because their brains have been damaged by hormones. It's
Mm.
going to happen. We're going to see disaster. We're already seeing the school shootings. We're going to see bigger disasters.
Mm.
People should not be free to do what they want with their own bodies. I'm sorry, they should not to the point where it's going to affect other people.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's a huge experiment. It's a huge, unregulated, and dangerous experiment.
It is rather unregulated. I mean, you Europeans have central or socialized healthcare, so there's better metrics, and
Mm-hmm,
then
mm-hmm.
there's levers of accountability that don't exist in America. America, we
Yeah,
have
yeah,
these independent professional organizations that have rather largely drank the Kool-Aid, and there's really no
yeah.
body above them. So
Mm-hmm.
doing the top-down route is really difficult unless you involve the legal system, which is really prohibitively expensive and takes a long time. And then on the other side, when you bring up experimentation, it's doubly damning because you probably, all things being equal, even if we are in the cultural moment, you probably couldn't convince a governing board that has enough integrity to look at the facts to um, to accept and then to fund a experiment on children, a hormonal experiment on children, and really diligently do the research. Like, you're really not supposed to experiment on people, especially children. But for some reason, so they're not doing the experiment. They're not doing the due diligence. They're just in the lab
Yeah,
in a controlled
yeah,
environment. They're just doing it in reality,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
and
They
then
got
not
people
even not even like doing, not even collecting the
checking.
data.
They're
They're not
not
even
even
doing
checking the
that
data.
part.
They're not even checking. And I've offered to do anybody in the UK. I will do your cognitive testing every two. Anyone in the UK
Mm,
who's on hormones, I will do it for free. I will collect the data.
mm,
I will do your IQ test every 2 years, and I will do your executive functioning tests every 2 years, and I will collect the data if no one else is bothering to do it. I'm
mm.
perfectly able to do it. I will do the
What
testing and see what's happening.
what's executive
But we're
functioning? How do you test that?
sorry.
How do you test
You
executive function? It's probably pretty simple, right?
you do it through either pen and paper tests or what they call functional testing. So you have like little puzzles and games and things like that. There's all different ways of testing
And
it,
then
but
you time it, and then you
yeah,
compare
yeah. I
it
mean,
across
children
to.
with ADHD have impaired executive function, so there's lots of tests. We have lots of measures for it, and I've offered to do it for free because the BPS isn't bothering. They're too busy affirming and doing, showing up at pride marches and not doing their jobs.
Mm,
We've seen that, there's been a drop in IQ. I think there's a couple of studies where I think there's one in India, one in Brazil, where children's IQ dropped 7 points. And I've been doing IQ tests for 30 years now. I've probably done in the thousands by now. And IQ is a really stable construct. It's one of the long posts I did. Your IQ you can measure basically from about 3 or 4 years old. You have different tests for different ages, up to about 90. And you should, someone's IQ at 5 should be roughly the same as their IQ at 90. Maybe about 2, 3 points difference. It does not drop. It doesn't move around like that. That's a person who's ill. They've got like a urine infection or a head injury or something like that. Then you'll see a change. But we are seeing these children on puberty blockers. We're seeing precipitous falls in their IQ. And I've only seen one fall like that in 30 something years. That was somebody with severe autism, which you sometimes get that. He's very, very severe autism. And I
mm,
tested him about 15 years ago, and they found me, and I tested him again about 6 months ago, and his IQ had dropped. But other than that, I've never seen IQ should remain stable. And Benjamin, if they found one single child whose IQ had dropped from the result of puberty blockers, that should have been enough to stop the entire project worldwide until, well, not that puberty is an illness, it shouldn't happen, but that alone should have been enough to stop it. It's like your fingerprint changing almost, or your blood type changing.
mm.
That's how unusual it is for someone's IQ to drop like that, especially a child, for no particular reason. They haven't had an insult to the brain that we know of, other than the puberty blockers.
Mhm.
And it's happening with adults as well. But as I said, I've offered to do testing for free, and no one's taken me up on it. But
Hmm.
not
Oh,
surprisingly,
some
I'm
people
very
don't want to know. This might be a low IQ question, But
Yeah.
IQ is used as or the analog of IQ, calling people names that denigrate their IQ is a
Yeah.
stable social construct or social
Yeah.
insult. And
Yeah.
you can see that in the so-called euphemistic treadmill where our word for people with low IQ always becomes an insult, and then so we have to invent another
Yeah.
one
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
across the board. But why is IQ so important for a human being? Why is that a marker almost like a foundational marker of one's status as a human?
I think it's become like that now. I would imagine in the pre-industrial age it wasn't. You didn't need to have I don't know, good working memory to know when to get the crops in. It was like you did it
Yeah.
twice a year. You planted
There
it
was
in
a
the spring.
village idiot, but there was no village midwit. That term hadn't been invented until
It's right. I missed what you said. It was a village
there
what?
there was a village idiot, but there wasn't a village
Mhm.
midwit. So people
The
could
midwit. Oh right,
oh
yes, indeed. Yeah, yeah,
yeah, because that it didn't really matter. Either you're suboptimal, but anybody above a
yeah,
certain threshold, it didn't really
yeah.
matter. Other than a priest,
It
maybe.
didn't really matter. Exactly, yeah. So they were educated. They were the only ones who could read and write. It didn't really matter. We didn't need those skills, but we certainly do need them now in the modern day and age.
Mhm.
You know, and
How how is it
Mhm.
adaptive? How is a certain amount of IQ necessary for modern functioning? This is a really simplistic line of discourse, but I want to stress
Mhm.
it's not just an insult. It does have it's really important that we're surrounded by people we're not messing with their IQs.
Yeah, 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 it is important. But what I have found from my work is that, I mean, they're a selective group because they come to see me because they've had trouble in their life and problems with their parenting. But there are very many people walking around with borderline learning disabilities, and they're functioning okay, they're
Mhm.
functioning okay. So I think, but so I think a lot of people can get by without having a particularly high IQ, especially now with AI coming in and all these sort of, these sort of things that are, I don't know if they're good or bad. I discovered AI the other day that I could just get it to rewrite. It kept saying, "Do you want to Copilot?" And I said, "No, no, no." And I just got Copilot, and it just reproduced my entire report in seconds. It was just there.
Yeah.
I was thought, God, this is a bit frightening. But to answer your question, but I think a lot of people don't need to have a high IQ now because we have people who are just
We have
getting along,
crutches.
toddling along with their life. Sorry?
We have crutches
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
for
We
that.
have the crutches, but the people who you think who should be, running things and setting laws and making agendas, they're the ones that we want to be functioning properly. And I just wonder if they are.
Mhm.
I just wonder if they are. And certainly the children coming through on puberty blockers and the adults taking it, we are deliberately creating a generation of disabled people. And I have a view here in the UK. We have a community model for learning disabilities. So you'll have maybe 6 or 7 adults living in a house, and you'll have a team around the adult, and they'll be looking after these people who are unable to look after themselves, like the person that I assessed the other day whose IQ had fallen. And I see this as the model that we're going to have um, in not very long into the future with people who have been in receipt of so-called gender affirming care. Their
Mhm.
bodies are going to break down. I think they're going to get early dementia. I think we're seeing
And then
that. We're
that's going to
seeing
lead
this.
them to
This.
wondering why they're missing their penis or breasts.
Yeah, exactly. And they're going to be, well, I think we're already seeing that most of them can't work. They're unable to work. Their social skills are knocked off. Their executive functioning is knocked off. But you look at they get to work on time. And when they get there, they're talking about their transition all day.
Hmm.
Where are their social skills? And I think what we're also ignoring, apart from the cognitive impact and the physical and the body, the infections and all this sort of stuff, is the impact of chronic pain. When I was doing my clinical training, I did a 6-month placement in chronic pain. And I think everyone is underestimating the impact of pain on the people who've had gender affirming care, pain that doesn't go away, pain that you can't control. And I know that I think we've had cases already of people committing suicide because they can't cope with the pain.
Hmm.
We have created, we have deliberately created a monumental disaster, and it's going to take a couple of decades for the true scale of this horror to unfold. But we're beginning to see it. We're beginning to see it with, with the murder of, people, the Minnesota school shooting. I think the Charlie Kirk's murder, that he was radicalized. I call transgenderism a public health emergency.
Hmm.
The war on drugs, the war this and that. It is a public health, but we've created this public health emergency.
Hmm. Hmm.
It's quite disastrous. It's quite disastrous.
From your point of view, as a psychologist, clinical psychologist, what is the
Mhm.
impact of cognitive ability on somebody's development of their personality? If you brain damage, willfully brain damage a child at a certain uptake of intelligence,
Yeah,
how
yeah.
does how do you suppose that impacts their ability
Mhm.
to really achieve their potential as a human being and then to understand
Right.
themselves too?
Well, of course. I mean, the difference between, say, an IQ of, I don't know, 110 and a 90 is getting a college degree. This a difference between
Well,
120 and 110
not
is getting
nowadays,
a
but
master's
yeah.
degree. Well, yeah, yeah, as it used to be. It's getting a master's degree. But the other
Okay.
aspect is it's the executive functioning. That's more necessarily important than the your full scale IQ score. It's your ability to, as I said, get to work on time. To remember what you've got to do, to organize your environment, to shift from one activity to the other, to not perseverate, to not get caught up in something, to have social skills, to be able to interpret and read other people. It's those other executive functions that are going to be knocked off by gender affirming care, as well as the baseline IQ. But it's the other stuff that's
Yeah.
going to render these
Yeah.
people unemployed. We see it every time we see them. And people say, "Look, this is what this person looks mad." Their executive functions have gone off. Their
Yeah.
executive functions are being knocked off, and that's the it's your executive functions that stops you from spending your entire paycheck the day after you get it, because
Yeah.
you've got to pay your rent, you've got
Well,
to pay
and
your this,
and
you've got to do
also
that.
understanding all different sorts of consequences to your actions. So you could probably see an
Yeah,
uptick in violence. So the downtick in
exactly.
being able to have a theory of mind, sympathy,
That's
actual
right.
sympathy for people, individuals, rather
Yeah.
than groups of
Yes.
victims or
Yeah. We're
whatever.
seeing, which brings me on to another thesis which I'm developing, that I think that most of the modern crop of transvestite men are psychopaths. It's an expression of, I call it trans type psychopathy. And one of the main things they lack is this theory of mind. They seem incapable of empathy and understanding that their impact, their activities are negatively impacting other people. Whether those other people are their children, which I call what I call trans type domestic violence, the men who transition and stand there and talk about how they found themselves. Their poor little kid is standing there staring at them and thinking, "What happened to my dad?" It's from that to the complete either inability to recognize that their actions are negatively affecting, or they don't care.
Mm.
And then the other aspects of what I call trans type psychopathy are the disinhibition, the callousness. There's a whole, I wrote an article on that, on the psychopathy of trans women, asterisks for the word on trans women. But I do think that a lot of people which society had contained have now been let off the leash. They've been given permission to exercise their basest instincts, you know,
Mm-hmm.
which
Yeah.
is which
While
is
damaging them,
again, sorry,
while damaging their actual
yeah,
bodies. Yeah. Yeah.
and other people as well. Uh, their partners, their children, the babies. They're feeding these babies chemical sludge. They don't care. They literally don't care. Other
Mhm.
people, I call them TTPs, are like the chair I'm sitting on. We are not embodied, realized human beings to them.
Mhm.
The whole world is seen through the lens of their ego desires, what they want,
Yeah.
what's making them happy.
Yeah.
and they literally don't care.
Yeah.
Which is why when people like J.K. Rowling said, dress how you please, do what you want, we misunderstood. We fundamentally misunderstood what we were dealing with about 20 years ago. These weren't normal people who have normal reactions and interactions and perceptions of other people. These are people who are entirely focused on themselves. They haven't gone beyond that stage of seeing other people as real. And society had contained those instincts. You had to behave in a certain way, and we took those controls off.
Mm-hmm.
Which is why now in the UK we're talking about how do we enforce the Supreme Court ruling that men don't go into women's toilets. This had been enforced for decades, since the beginning of time. We knew that men didn't go into women's toilet. Why is it so difficult? It's because society always recognized that, say, 10% of people were psychopaths, and we kept them in check by certain rules.
Mm-hmm.
We've taken those rules off. We've literally shot ourselves in the head as
In
a
the name of
society.
tolerance. Yeah.
In the name of tolerance.
Yeah.
We've gone from, I was watching Downton Abbey yesterday with my friend, the poor woman, divorced woman, you can't be in the same house as the divorced woman, and she's hiding under the stairs and she's got the back entrance because she's divorced. And in less than 100 years, we've gone from one extreme to the next of all these queer rules, these odd rules. You couldn't go into the royal enclosure, you couldn't do this, to now anything happens. Men can breastfeed babies. Your dad is now your mum. Men go into the toilets. It's just it's just insane. It's just madness.
Something that's a wee bit
Mhm.
ironic about the transgender phenomena is that the trans asterisk women
Yeah,
behave like men on hormones, on
yeah,
steroids, literally. But
yeah,
and so they're the outies. They're the ones who are most egregious. They're the ones that are in your face, the most violent ones for the most part.
yeah.
I'm wondering, what are your thoughts on, because and you kind of you laid out a diagnosis of psychopathy for the trans asterisk
Mhm,
women.
mhm.
What about the trans asterisk men? What about the females? What is the
Okay,
psychology that's driving them?
I think, see, this is the difficulty with transvesticism. The end result is the same. Someone has changed their gender, but
Hmm.
the roots to it are all very different, multifaceted, multifactorial. It looks like the same thing, so we think we're talking about the same thing, but we're not. Whenever most of the time, I'd say 99% of the time, I listen to a female detransitioner talk, and she's giving an interview, and within about the first 5 minutes, she'll talk about child abuse. Somebody abused her nearly all the time. Yeah. So
Hmm.
that's one major routine for girls.
Or
It's abuse,
bullying, in some
bullying,
cases. So
psychosocial
the
factors.
yeah, there's a social
Yeah.
factor. Yeah.
Psychosocial, but very often childhood sexual abuse. One thing I think we haven't, no, I have never seen anyone talk about is early menarche. If you start your period at 9, yeah, but you're because that age of starting periods, because nutrition and stuff has come right down. So you've got girls at 8 and 9 starting their periods, and starting your period is quite a traumatic thing for women to do anyway. Whether you're 12, 13, or 14, starting it at 9, but your body is now more mature, but your brain is still a 9-year-old. You
Yeah.
are going to try and reject that part of your body. So I think that's one route. That's just something, personal theory I've got, that the
Yeah.
age of menarche, constant lowering of the age of menarche is part of the reasons why girls are trying to escape their physical bodies.
Yeah.
I think the other reason is your as we say in the UK, your bog standard anxiety disorder growing up. I used to see constant referrals for eating disorders and self-harming. I literally can't remember the last time I've seen a referral that's mentioned
Really?
either of those two.
Oh, well, you don't
We've
have to
cured
take
it.
it's solved. Anorexia is
We've cured
solved.
anorexia. Yeah. We've cured anorexia. We've cured self-harming. We've cured cutting. They're all trans-identified now. And we know that girls do this. We've got the Salem, we've got the Children's Crusade, we've got, when the girls thought they'd all swallowed glass pianos, the hysteria, we've seen this all the time.
Yeah.
This is how girls socialize with each
Mm,
other. This is nothing new. What's new now,
yeah.
as you say, is the internet spreading this nonsense. And what's new is professionals like myself not saying to the girls, stop it. This is just growing up. This
Yeah.
is just normal. You'll be fine in a year's time. And again, this whole construction of puberty has been such a difficult thing to go through. I think that's a very Western thing as well.
Yeah.
You know, I
Puberty
think
should be
that's
a
our culture.
choice or whatever.
Yeah, or that it's something so. I mean, I did say that starting your period is not the easiest thing in the world, but we set puberty up as this hugely difficult thing that you've got to struggle with. It's just not a
Hmm.
part of human development.
Yeah.
And what nobody has asked, Benjamin, I don't see anybody asking this question.
And cunt.
Why has human development suddenly gone so wrong? We've been we've been going on ticking along for 300,000 years as Homo sapiens. And as of 2013, it's all going wrong. It's just the baby lacks face validity, as we say as psychologists. Why are we not seeing a concurrent rise in, I don't know, Down syndrome or dwarfism or polydactyly or microcephaly? Why is only this tiny part of human development going wrong? Why
Mm.
is our children getting put into the wrong bodies in the
Hmm.
room? No one can answer that. And they said, oh, it's environmental. No, it's not, because the third world is pretty awash in toxins and stuff. We should be
Okay.
seeing it everywhere.
Mm.
The
Hmm.
children's neurodevelopmental changes through puberty are the same whether you're in London or Ulaanbaatar. You go through the same neurobiological changes. You
Okay.
should be seeing it. And where are all the dead children? Where are all the dead children?
That's a
Where are
question that can be really floating. But so that leads us to the other aspect of
they?
the conversation. Just how based are you? Just how deep did that red pill travel? If we start talking about the cultural aspects of this, then we have to start talking about the political cultural
Okay.
aspects of it. And so a lot of people you look at the development of the ideas of transgenderism. There's one pathway which is the medical or the establishment pathway with John Money and
Yes.
Kinsey and sexology. But then there's also the academic pathway with feminism, postmodernism, and then the presuppositions, certain formulations of liberalism prioritize consent as the basis of morality. If you don't consent to something, you should not have to participate in it or undergo it. And that has gone from reasonable, the consent of the governed to I never consented to being born, so could you please kill me?
Yeah.
I never consented to go to being a female, so make me a male. So like there's a moral substrate to this. And there's really rich conversations where people can blame a whole bunch of things. So what's your analysis, the cultural analysis? What are we missing in the West? Or where did we
I
turn
say
the corner too fast?
what my mum says. My mum is 89, Guyanese lady, Caribbean lady. You know what she says? It's really simple. She said, white people got too much food.
Too
We've got
much.
nothing else to worry about.
Yeah.
We have nothing. We've fabricated this chimera of gender
Mouse
because we've got nothing
utopia.
else. Yeah,
Yeah.
we've literally got nothing else to worry about. That's my mum's argument, and I will stick to that.
Mhm.
There's no real complex, etiology to this. We are
Yeah.
just overfed, overprivileged. We've got too much time in our hands to sit and worry about our puberty development, our gender identity.
Yeah.
We're just overindulged. We've overindulged ourselves on this
Yeah.
ridiculousness.
Well, we've made a pinata of distress and not passed on the ability to our children to weather even
Yeah,
ambiguity
resilient.
and ambivalence, let alone distress.
Exactly. And if you tell children that puberty is this awful, terrible thing that you've got to go through, puberty is very, you find every human being that ever reached adulthood, including the ones who are telling you can't do puberty, went through puberty. And I think we really need to just stop indulging people and stop indulging children and
Mhm.
just say no.
Mhm. But we can't.
You know,
So, which is another symptom of our culture.
yeah, we're not allowed to say no to children. When I used to work in a child development clinic years ago, and we'd get kids that eating problems. We'd always get children with eating problems, and I had this a lot when I was living in Qatar. And they say, "Oh, you'll only eat this and eat that." And I'd say, "Right, do you know what you need to do? Just let them go hungry for 2 or 3 days. Instinct will kick in. They will eat. you know. And I couldn't always separate my own Caribbean background from being a clinical psychologist. But you know what? I could create the most complex eating program in introducing foods of different textures over such and such a time, and only have a certain amount on the plate, and have the dinner table this, and make sure mum, or you could just let the child go hungry for a couple of days,
Mm-hmm.
and they would eat.
Mm-hmm.
And I think this
It
is what we
that
need to
speaks
do.
to a lack of faith in nature and an over
Yes,
reliance on will or man's ability to fix the problems.
yeah. And I think my perspective on this is shaped by having lived for some time in the Caribbean when I was younger, and having seen poverty and seen children who didn't have food to eat. So I'm coming to this from a slightly different perspective.
Yeah.
But again, we talked about culture. My culture is a Black Caribbean woman from a Black Caribbean background. And this is just ridiculous.
Mm-hmm.
The West has just gone bonkers and indulging itself with this navel gazing nonsense.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have gender dysphoria. You don't. You're not a girl. You're not a boy. You are what you are. Stop it. Go
Yeah.
away. Leave my office. We're not talking about gender. Full stop. That's it.
Yeah. What, why are your family such tremendous achievers, doctors and psychologists and air pilots and stuff like that? What is it in your
Just it's. I don't know. I think it goes back to my parents' experiences of coming to Britain in the 1950s and having no expectations made of them. And I always remember my sister was quite a fast runner. And my father just refused to let her go in sports day because he just said, no, that's what they expect of you of a Black child. You're not running.
ah
And yeah, and I remember every time we get a new supply teacher, I would automatically get given remedial work to do. They would just take one look at me, right? You're flat, right? You got a different book, you know. So I think this goes back to what we talk about with the people having too much to eat. That's a sort of simplification that my mother does. I grew up in adversity in the 1970s. I grew up in it's nothing like it was in America, but you'd walk home and they'd just be like NF, National Front, nigger. People shout out Enoch, and the parents of my school friends would stand at their gates and just shout, "You black so and so, go home," and all this sort of business. So I grew up with that, and I think that just sort of made me more resilient. Which is again what the kids who think they've got gender
it
dysphoria, they just need to
so
stop. No, you haven't.
you there's two ways to process
Mhm.
that. There's resilience and there's resentment. Why
Yeah,
did you choose the resilience, not resentment? Were you not allowed?
that's a really good question, which I've not thought about until right this minute. I think maybe that's where intelligence comes in, perhaps. I was able to have a different way out. I was able to prove my teachers wrong. I mentioned Bullfinch's mythology. I remember standing up in front of the class and just reciting the whole Greek alphabet. For some reason, I learned it. I just remember the shock, you know, on the
Yeah.
teacher's face. And I think again, going back to maybe that's where having the intelligence to prove people wrong. I think if
Mm,
perhaps you have those adverse effects and you're not able to disprove those ideas, those perceptions of you,
mhm.
then resentment can come in. But I was
Or you
able
want
to,
or you want the easy way out and you just blame everybody else instead of taking
yeah,
responsibility.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And I've been listening to, in fact, just this not too long ago, I was having this discussion with my neighbour about Charlie Kirk about whether what he was saying was racist or not, and I think he was actually saying, African Americans have had an awful history, and they have suffered a lot. But you now have, and I don't think DEI has done us any favors as Black people, none whatsoever, because you are always seen as being the DEI high, the person who shouldn't be where they are. It's actually been counterproductive, I think.
Mhm.
It's been counterproductive for us as Black people.
Mm.
I mean,
Yeah.
I used to get it a lot before DEI was even a concept. I would go to clinical assessments with my students who would be white, and they would automatically assume that my student was the psychologist and I was God knows what, chopped liver standing there. So those attitudes have always been there. They
Yeah.
haven't come about because of DEI, but DEI has not helped.
Yeah.
It hasn't helped competent black people like myself,
Exposure,
like my barristers and
again,
stuff like that.
that's another instance of the West trying to not being patient with nature and trying to fix a problem and then throwing
Yes,
and
yes.
maybe the civil rights or desegregation could have
Hmm.
happened without the government being involved, but once the government got involved in freedom of association, now the government controls that. Like we let in the dog, that was supposed to, do something outside and kind of solve a problem over
Yeah.
there, and we brought it into the house.
And I think that the quote that Charlie Kirk has said about the getting rid of the Civil Rights Act, but the rest of it, the bit where they always say end quote, the lefties, and what he was then saying is it's been used to usher in all sorts of other nonsense, like men and women's sports. They've hijacked on the back of it. That's
Yeah,
what he was really saying, you know?
yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah. Can this,
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if this is improper. I'm really fascinated with your dad. He seems like quite a character. Do you have any stories about him, like where he proved himself to be a very
He
unique
was well,
individual?
not he was just like he rose in the RAF and he did his job well. And I was remember going on to camp with him and they would like salute him when he was at the gate. And I just remember the pride of that. But then
Yeah,
I also know what it must have been like for him when he took that uniform off, the Air Force uniform, and he was just another black man, you know?
mm, hmm,
And I think that my mother too, my mother worked in a factory, she worked in a factory. And I think Caribbean people of that generation endured a lot, you know?
yeah,
When
yeah,
I talk to my children now, even about what I experienced in the 70s, they're gobsmacked, their mouths are hanging open.
yeah,
What would be blatant racism, what was normal then. I always remember, one of my teachers looking me in the face when we were playing netball and ball and over. She said, "Oh, well, you people don't feel pain the same way." I'll never forget that. That
wow,
was my experience. I think my parents certainly had the stronger experience of coming on literally on the boat from the Caribbean and then just encountering Britain, austere post-war Britain. And I
yeah,
think I think maybe that's what you asked me earlier, Charlie, about sorry, Benjamin, about resilience. And I think it was possibly those experiences that my parents had that strengthened. You either get forged in the fire, you get melted by that fire. And I think those
yeah,
experiences certainly
yeah,
strengthened it. But then also my parents went back to the Caribbean when I was 14. And it was like, for me, it was touted as this homecoming. You're going home, going back. And it wasn't. It was horrible. I think it's one of the reasons why I ended up becoming a clinical psychologist. It was
really.
an absolute bloody nightmare.
How
I
and
was
why
I
did
was
that
I
feed
was
into
English.
your aspirations?
Sorry, sorry.
No, you were going to answer the question. Yeah, go on.
Yeah, I was just the outside. I was the English duck they used to call me. Used to laugh at my accent, laugh at my hair, laugh at my clothes, laugh at everything. And I think again that probably built my personal resilience of what should have been a joyous return home. It was
Yeah,
returning to my parents' home, not to mine.
yeah,
You
yeah,
know, my home is here, which is why when I see this march that we had in London this weekend, and the politicians are saying, "Oh, the right wingers this, the right wingers that." Everyone there waving the British flag or the English flag was the right wing fascists. And I was planning to go with my friend. I just didn't manage to because I wasn't feeling very well. But I would have been there. And I don't want them to deny the fact that I'm British because I'm black. I'm not a fascist because I'm waving the British flag.
hmm,
It's terribly insulting.
yeah.
Terribly insulting.
This is not the gender topic, but since we're here, what is
Mm-hmm.
your opinion of the direction of Britain, especially with regard to its migrant policy? You are the beneficiary of a certain
Mm-hmm.
migratory or immigration policy. You
Yeah.
benefited, like your whole life is framed
Yeah.
by your parents moving over there.
Absolutely.
It
Yeah.
seems from certain reports that I'm seeing that
Mm-hmm.
the influx of especially Middle Eastern migrants
Yes.
or Islamic migrants is probably going to reshape Britain into a place that's
Absolutely.
no longer Britain,
Yeah.
probably. But what do you think
And I
about
think
that?
I think that the difference is that my parents came from a British colony. They were born British citizens. My parents were born British.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
My mum says she remembers seeing the troops marching off to war. They were given the day off school. She said the Governor General was there on his horse, in his hat, and the West Indian Regiment was marching down the high street to go and fight for Britain. So they were born British. So it's not the same as somebody
Yeah.
coming on a boat from wherever. We were born British. That's the first thing. That's the first thing. But I think having lived in the Middle East for a number of years and having tried to do therapy with people there and giving up because the culture was so different, I don't think the politicians understand. They have no understanding of how Islam particularly governs every aspect of their thinking and how different that shapes. You know, I'm studying Arabic at the moment, and I can see just by the language how the language shapes your thinking. And I think they haven't got a clue. And I had a friend who was, when I was in Qatar, she wanted to get her friends to come to come for a family wedding, and they were Palestinian. And they were not allowed to set foot in Qatar. They had to go and do this reception somewhere. They had to go somewhere in the Mediterranean because they just weren't allowed. They weren't allowed. And they said it would affect their culture. That they wouldn't let the Palestinians in. And this one woman who was just going for a family wedding was not even allowed to transit through Qatar.
Wow.
I think they have no understanding. The politicians have no understanding of the gulf of cultural, just the way the aspect, the whole way they look at the world is very different, and it's completely shaped by this belief in Islam. And we lost that sort of religious fervor maybe 400 or 500 years ago, but these people still have it.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, what do you think is what's going to shake that?
Not well.
Yeah.
Not well. Not well at all. And I think that trying to suppress it and calling your constituents fascists. I saw Trevor Phillips, who actually went to the school I went to in Guyana years ago, saying today we need to understand why were these people out there on the street. Don't just call them fascists. Ask what it is. Why were they there?
Yeah.
What are they? My chest. I mean, look, as I said, my parents were born British citizens. The British had form of going all over the world, taking over. And my mum said that when she was growing up, everybody from the local headmaster, the headmaster of her primary school, from the headmaster to the Governor General, was a white man. A white British man was in charge of everything.
Mm-hmm.
So in a way, what we're seeing now is the chickens coming home to roost.
Mm-hmm.
You know, for Britain's
Yeah,
colonial
but
policies.
one could say, and probably sound like a fascist saying it, but British exported order, and now they're importing disorder. For all
They're
of the
importing a different sort of order that they don't understand. An
okay,
order that
that's
is,
probably better. Yeah.
yeah, that is it is shaped by religion. We've lost all of that. We've lost all of that. The family structures are different. The belief systems are different. You know,
Mm-hmm. Their
the
treatment
one
of
time
women.
sorry,
Their treatment
sorry,
of
what did you say?
women is different.
Yeah, but this is what I say to people who find it quite surprising. I only lived in Qatar for 5 years, right? But not for 1 second of those 5 years did I feel unsafe as a woman or disrespected as a woman. It's a very strange way of doing things. These are rich Gulf Arabs, so their perspective might be different from your person from Cairo, from the slums of Cairo or Afghanistan or whatever. But I felt more comfortable and safer as a woman. I was a pampered expat living in Qatar than I do in London. You know,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and I discovered after trying to do psychotherapy with the Qatari ladies and families, which I stopped after a while, that they rule the roost. They rule the roost behind the scenes. Their husbands are terrified of them. They will divorce their husbands at the drop of a hat.
Mm.
The women have a lot of family wealth. They control what's going on. What we see in the West is a very, very. It's not the real thing. It's not the real thing. And I remember talking to, but they have a similar misunderstanding of us. Because I remember talking to one of my ladies, and she actually said to me that she was scared to come and see me at my house in the expat compound because she thought we were all having sex parties.
Oh,
She was physically scared to come onto the compound because she had such a warped view of what Western women were like,
yeah.
you know. And we similarly have a very warped view of what it's like for them there. I mean, like
Why
you have your
does
separate entrance. Mm-hmm.
no
Carry
go
on, yeah.
on? No.
No, I was saying that every government building has a separate entrance for the ladies. You can see the ladies' entrance. And it's like, I just think, oh my God, this is like Jim Crow. You know, this is literally like a separate entrance. But you will go inside and say, I'm going to pay my electricity bill or something. And if there's a queue and I'm 20 in the queue, the men will say, Madame, Madame, and I will go to the front. It's a really weird way of respecting women, you know?
Hmm. Mm-hmm.
But even though you've got a separate entrance to get in, and I play a game, and you have a separate seating ladies area, men's waiting, ladies waiting, and I deliberately, it's just a game I used to play with myself. I'd say, right, I'm on the clock now. How long is it going to take for some security guard, normally an African guy, to come and say, Madame, you're in the wrong section? And it was always within about 3 or 4 minutes to come and move me on to
Hmm.
go and sit on the ladies' side. But it was always done very respectfully. The ladies' queues were always shorter. I'd always go to the front. So it was a contradiction. We don't understand when we say that these again these were rich Gulf Arab ladies.
Yeah.
They're not. If what we perceive as oppression is perhaps just a completely different way of organizing society, which
Mm-hmm.
we do not understand. The politicians say don't understand. They have no idea.
But not just society, also organizing psychology. Why did you give up on or stop trying
Okay,
to
what
do psychological work with them?
psychotherapy? Okay, but going back to IQ test, there was I used to because I was the only British trained clinical psychologist out there. Um, they used to come to me a lot to do IQ tests, and I realised that the children, the way they had understood knowledge and perception, it was too culturally biased for the start. They would do really well on things like the working memory and stuff, and they couldn't do anything else. But they were brilliant at working memory because they'd all learned the Quran by rote. But the one moment when I realised I could not do psychotherapy with that population, it was let me see if I can remember it right correctly. It was a Qatari lady who was married to an American convert, and her father had died quite suddenly. And I remember, and she'd come to me because her son was ill, but her father had just dropped dead, just died. I said to her, well, what did the post-mortem show? And she said, oh, we didn't do one. We didn't do one. It was Allah's will. But I said, well, it could be a congenital problem that you're trying to find out whether your son's got it.
Mm.
And it was just conceptually, she just couldn't understand what I was saying. And for her, doing a post-mortem, not doing the post-mortem was more important than finding out whether her son had a congenital problem who could also drop dead of a heart problem or whatever. And
Hmm.
at that moment, that was one instance. And then there was another instance where a lady had come to me because her child had been misbehaving. And I was saying to her, okay, we're going to have to put some sanctions around this child's behavior because she's playing up. Child was 10. And I said, what do you think you can do to sort of contain her behavior? What controls can you put in? And she looked at me and she sat there and she said, okay, the next time we go, she's not flying first class. She's going to fly an economy with the maid. I remember thinking, I've never flown first class. And I remember thinking at that point, I thought she was going to say that we're going to take her toys away for a bit or she's going to grab.
Yeah.
No, that was it. We're going to the
Yeah.
Maldives in 2 weeks' time. She's going to go economy. And I just thought, okay, okay, I
Yeah.
can't do therapy. Because again, the construction of the family is different. They don't have intimate marriages like we have here. Marriage is purely for producing babies,
Mm.
and the women spend all their time in the women's tent, the majlis, and the men's, they just separate. So the whole marriage therapy counseling, I couldn't do it.
Yeah.
There was the cultural void was too great. But again, these are people that are coming into Europe by the millions. And it's not, and even when they say, I was just talking to somebody about this the other day, because I had to see a lady last week who's a refugee. And people say, where are the women and children? Right? And why is it always young men? And but even the women and children, in fact, they're more damaged. If you allow the women and children in, they're here because they have suffered huge trauma. I've worked with, women, children, people raped. I was working with someone last week who was sold to her uncle, da, 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 from Sudan. And these women and children who we look on sympathetically are coming with enormous, enormous packages of psychological problems, the least of which is PTSD. They've all had sexual trauma. They've had kids taken away from them. So even the women and children who, we can accommodate and help are coming with so much burdens and baggage.
Yeah.
And
that'll reverberate through your society as your society absorbs them.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And behavioral children, parenting problems, you've got to, put them on parenting courses. Then you're trying to map, as we talked about culture, you're trying to map a Western cultural style of parenting onto these people from Afghanistan or sub-Saharan Africa or wherever. It's not going to work. The two things can't work together. Our culture is just too different.
Yeah. The hubris of the Western mind is going to be its downfall if it doesn't learn a little
I do think it
humility.
I do think, and I think, yeah. And the hubris of trying to reorganize biological sex. I mean, how we're literally playing God. I was just looking just now on Twitter about the picture at King's College Hospital, your pregnancy journey, and one of them is a man or a male figure who's meant to be pregnant.
Yeah.
Insanity. It is insanity.
Yeah.
We are literally, I'm not particularly religious, but we are literally trying to play God. We have decided that male, female, children, that's not how things work. We're trying to rewrite our own biology.
Yeah. And importing people with a radically different point of view while castrating our own. It's like, it's just civilizational suicide on all these different vectors.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I think what makes it more dangerous is, I talk about every time I go up to London, I have to use the loo, and I'm thinking, is there a man in here? That's one aspect of it. But the other side of it is the failure of the institutions to have stood guardian to our values and to what is right and wrong, just basic biological reality. It's a failure of the institutions, the police, the doctors, everything from, I went to Kew Gardens last year and they were talking about queer roses. Everything has been corrupted. And I think this is what I was saying to someone today on Twitter. This is what it must have been like in 1933 Germany. And you saw every institution fall one at a time to Nazism. And nobody held the line. No institution has held the line. Not one single institution has held the line.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's a suicide. It's a societal suicide.
It's very precarious, and I don't know how the UK is going to. The UK's leaders are going to show genuine leadership that prioritizes their own people as opposed to whatever project that they actually are, prioritizing over their own people. But if they don't take care of that, it'll inevitably lead to violence, and then that will probably just give them more ammunition to do even more suppression of the native population there.
They don't care. They're living in their fancy houses in Surbiton or wherever it is in the home counties. They don't care. It's not affecting them.
Yeah.
They can virtue signal and show that they're, for now.
Yeah.
But, you just let people completely different cultural values. Yeah. They're guided by God. God, every minute of the day, they think about God. I had a friend who was a pediatrician. The last things I know, we'll have to finish shortly. And she lost her faith while we were in Qatar. But she said that she was a pediatric endocrinologist, and so she got pregnant while she was there. And she said she was so steeped in it that even as a pediatrician, she knew she shouldn't be fasting while she was pregnant. She felt obliged to fast. And she started losing her faith, and she was living on a compound of Arab expats, and the neighbors were starting to notice that they weren't going to mosque on Fridays, and she had to move out because they would have got in trouble. I'm not quite sure what would have happened, but she said they were being ostracized and whatever because they were seen to be not going to mosque, and they had to go and move out separately. But if a pediatric endocrinologist who knows she shouldn't be fasting feels the pressure so much because the Quran explicitly states if you're pregnant, you don't fast. But that is how strong that culture is, how powerful their social pressures. In fact, it's very similar to what we're experiencing here now with gender ideology. It's just a different ideology.
Hmm.
But that
Hmm.
pressure to conform was so powerful that she said she knew that she was harming her baby, but she
Hmm.
couldn't be seen to. When my little son was about 4 or 5 at the time, and children are not meant to fast, and it's like 52 degrees, and they were complaining at the nursery that the expat children were drinking water, and these are little toddlers who are not meant to fast, you know. But that wedding to that weddedness to that ideology, and that we're seeing the same, we're doing the same thing, but we've just
Yeah.
chosen a different ideology to be wedded to. We're gonna put you on puberty blockers. We're not gonna make
Yeah.
you. We're not gonna stop you drinking water when it's 50 degrees, but
Yeah.
we'll put you on puberty blockers.
Yeah. Yeah. And Islam at least has stood the test of a few centuries of propagation. I don't think the transition stuff can operate outside of a social milieu that propagates it because it literally ends human reproduction. So it
Yeah,
can't last
yeah.
forever.
This is a dead end.
But
It's a dead end.
what amount of damage will it do before it is decoupled from our society? And voices such as yours and those who I've interviewed on this topic are essential in providing people well-reasoned arguments against it and maybe emboldening people to stand up more because cowardice is the way that this stuff propagates just
Yeah,
as much as the
yeah,
radicalism.
yeah. We have to. I'm sure
Yeah.
there's people in BPS listening to me and ticking off things that I've said today. But do you know what?
Mm.
We're in a fight against evil. It's
Hmm.
good versus evil. It's literally as simple as that. That's what it boils down to.
Yeah.
And this is coming
Yeah.
from someone who's an atheist.
Yeah. 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 There's no atheists in foxholes or I guess gender clinics.
Yeah, indeed. I'm
Maybe
beginning to
outside.
believe that there is an actual physical force of evil abroad in the world now.
Hmm.
Right from the Bible or whatever, whichever religious book you want to take it.
Hmm.
We have let loose something very dark and very sinister.
Hmm.
We've let it loose. It's almost like there's something demonic is abroad in the world now.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And that's
So
with all my training as a scientist practitioner. It feels bigger than that. It feels outside that.
yeah, exactly. Which is another conversation. Dr. P, you are a fascinating individual, and I'm sorry that people aren't going to be able to see your beautifully expressive face and beautiful face in its own
My
right.
big afro.
And
Hopefully
your
next year. Hopefully next year.
gorgeous, floofy hair. Um, where can people find you, and what are they going to find when they get there?
Okay. I'm at Psychogirl211 on Twitter. That's basically where I am now. I got hounded off Instagram
Mm,
for telling a woman that her testosterone was going to damage her brain. So I lost
mm,
all my followers on Instagram. I just kept getting banned from Facebook. Literally, I'd write something, 30-day ban.
mhm.
That's not a woman, 30-day ban. I gave up on
Yeah,
Facebook.
yeah.
So I'm only on Twitter now at SiteGirl211. And I expect every day to lose my account. I wake up literally every morning, I have my coffee, come down and check. Oh, it's still there, because I
Really?
think at some point, at
Hmm.
some point that's going to get silenced
I
as
don't know
well.
about
You
that,
know,
but I hope not.
I hope not. Yeah, but yeah, Site Girl 211, and there are articles under my profile. I've written about 12 now. I've got another one coming out very shortly about surrogacy, and then I'm going to start working on another one about the connection between transgenderism and mental illness.
Hmm.
That it's partly not only psychopathology, but it's an actual people who think they're transgender are in a state of psychosis.
Hmm.
They're not floridly shouting, like we here in London, you always see them at the bus stop shouting and yelling at people. It's a different form of psychosis, but they are in a form of psychosis. And I've
Hmm.
got different levels, level 1, 2, and 3. But people who are, so that's another article I've got coming out soon. I'm hoping to get them all compiled into a book.
And
Um,
beyond Twitter, are you
mhm.
connected to a group? Do you feel isolated or because it is Turf Island for a reason. So you connected with,
Yeah, because I'm not fully out yet, which probably will happen after I get deregistered, and then the gloves will come off when I'm doing my gardening job or whatever I'll be doing instead. I will be more open then. But at the moment now, I'm just alone. I'm
wow.
alone, deep inside, just typing away and tweeting too much and getting sore eyes because I'm spending so much time on Twitter.
Yeah,
So I've not been
yeah,
on very much recently because I've got my eyes have been hurting. Yeah. So at the moment, no,
yeah.
I'm not affiliated or registered, with anybody. Just
Okay.
me.
Yeah, you have such a vital energy that I know whenever you do team up with somebody, you're going to be another whirligig,
I hope
propulsing
so.
this movement towards the heights.
I wish we get more psychologists speaking out. They email me, they DM me and say, "Can you keep talking?
Yeah,
What you're saying, yeah, these are clinical psych. We can't say anything. I'm afraid, but can you keep? I liked your last post. Can you say that again?
yeah.
They DM me all the time,
To
all over the world.
anybody who's in that position, I know it's painful to put your life on the line for the sake of other people's lives, but the more people stand up,
Yeah,
the quicker this will resolve. And
right.
cowardice is a luxury that is not going to reward you once Rome is burned to the ground. So,
To the ground. Yeah, we should
yeah.
have strangled this at birth. We should have been strangled in the cradle.
Mm.
The first time a bloke said, "I'm a woman," use the wrong pronoun. That should have been it. That should have been the like. No, you're not, and I'm not going to do it. We've gone from politeness to where we are now. Be
Mm.
polite. Be polite. Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter.
Mm.
It's just good social manners, and we're facing the collapse of our society. I think.
Yeah,
Twenty.
there keep on issuing these wake up calls, and hopefully more and more people
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
hear that for what it is. It's not a dog whistle; it's a trumpet at this point.
Yeah, yeah, we need
Yeah,
it. We need a carrying call.
yeah.
Yeah, back to sanity.
Dr. P, thank you very much for your evening. I'll let you know when this is up, and I'll link
Yes,
to your work down there in the description so people can follow you.
yeah. I don't cough too much in people's ears. Okay, thank you, Benjamin. Very
Thank
good
you.
talking to you. Okay, right.
Absolutely.
Bye-bye.
My pleasure.
Bye.
Bye.